Hello, and welcome to the Green Team, the weird little spin-off of the Legendarium podcast that talks about the books and topics the main crew hasn't gotten around to yet, or in this case, has already gotten to, and with a much more important guest than we have. I'm sorry, Tori, but it's Brandon Sanderson.
No, Sanderson was on for the truth,
It was,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
No,
was
no,
he?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the truth.
Oh, never mind then. I'm
We
just
definitely
wrong.
have the better one.
We definitely have the better guest then.
We totally have the better one. I have an amazing guest that I brought onto the podcast because I am amazing.
She's better than Brandon.
You know what? Fair. I'm Ashaman, and today I have with me Little Red Book, Hurinfan, and a very special guest, Tori, from the Deep Dive Cosmere Podcast. Welcome, Tori.
Welcome, Tori. Say hello to the
Hello.
people.
Hello, Internet. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're happy you're here. In the spirit of the season, we'll be discussing Sir Terry Pratchett's Hogfather. I have some questions before we start. First, how would you rate this book on a 5-star scale?
5 stars.
5 stars for sure.
You guys aren't going to elaborate on
No,
your stars?
I love it. It's great. 5 stars.
I'm going to give it 5 stars too. This is Little Red Book, by the way. But I feel like I need to read it again because there's a lot going on in this book. And I feel like this is something I'm probably going to start reading every year.
Yeah, it's a really good Christmas story, I think. I probably give it 5 stars, but I'm having a hard time trusting my own opinion at the moment because, I'm just so stressed and things aren't very funny for me right now. So, a lot of the jokes that I, read, I was like, oh, that's funny, but I had no emotional register. As a comp sci major, I did really like Hex, though, so, Hex alone brings up the book at least a star or two.
I love Hex.
That's
Hex
great.
is amazing.
There is a question specifically for Hex, so yeah, we'll deal with Hex in a bit. But shall we give overall thoughts about the narrative?
So my thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts. I wrote all the question thoughts. I think that what I really, really appreciated about the narrative in particular is that it brings up a lot of folklore. Like you have these, they're called small gods in Discworld, but they show up in the book here and there. And they all kind of get together and help each other out because Hogfather is missing. And I just really, that's right at the beginning of the book. It's not a spoiler. And I just love that. You have the idea of, hey, we're all in this together. We better find the Hogfather. And how Death also tricks his granddaughter into looking for Hogfather while he plays Hogfather. That was Death going around and talking in all caps and delivering presents was just so great. I loved it so much.
Besides Hex, Death's experience with the Hogfather persona is definitely my favorite part of the book, especially when he gets angry about it.
I like his interactions with Albert, and Albert trying to
Yes.
explain how humans think about things and how they have to think about things, and he can't process and filter these things, so he feels a certain way. And his interactions with Albert are my favorite. But that's a big part of the best part of the story, which is Death being the Hogfather. As far as
That's pretty much Death's whole character arc is trying to understand humanity and how we tick, and you see that progressing over all of his books. Like in the beginning, he doesn't understand humans at all, and then as the books go on, he's adopted a daughter, and then she gets married, and now Death has a granddaughter, and just the way his house progresses and changes over the many books is it's a reflection of how he's come to understand humanity as an immortal anthropomorphic personification.
Mm-hmm. And I believe he learns to appreciate cats. Is that also part of his journey?
Yeah, he appreciates cats from the get-go. He loves cats. Okay. There's a whole bunch of quotes about Death and cats.
More human than me in that respect.
Cats are fine.
Cats are excellent. I love cats. I also love dogs. It's not an exclusive thing for me.
So yeah, about the narrative. So we have, what would you say, 3 or 4 major plot lines? Death himself, Susan's story, which intersects with Death quite a bit, Tea Time and the crew, and then Red Coley and the crew, right?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
And
And
then
yeah,
several
so.
subplots, like with the Raven.
Yeah.
And the beggars.
Lots of subplots. It's Discworld, right? But I think they all do really well to tie in the themes together and the theme of belief. And I really enjoyed all of them. And like I'd say the most extraneous one is not extraneous, superfluous would probably be the Wizards, but theirs was so funny and charming that I didn't mind them being at all.
And then you wouldn't have Hex if you didn't have the wizards.
You would have
Yeah.
I really like Red Coley. I think he's hilarious.
Every time
all
I
the
read,
wizards.
yeah, no, I do too. Every time I read Red Cully, I read it as a ridicule.
Red Coley.
I don't-
Oh, that makes sense.
And so this is like one of the things, we can skip this question because I have it further on the spreadsheet. One of the things is like there's a very Dixonian feel about this book. Like the names have this feel like what they are. Obviously, death is death, but you know what I'm saying. Like there's this feel about the names.
That's Pratchett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sort of does feel like a Christmas Carol in the
does.
sense that like the night just won't end. And it's very dreamlike, and like you can't really believe what's going on. There's no ghosts Christmas past, unfortunately. Actually, there kind of is. Oh yeah,
Kind of
never
ghost,
mind.
yeah.
No ghost of Christmas future. But besides that, like, shot for shot, Christmas Carol, right?
Yeah,
In a lot of
exact same
ways.
thing.
Mm-hmm. Except for instead of getting paid by the word like Dickens, I think Terry Pratchett gets paid by the pun, or alternatively, joke. Yes, pune.
Why does everybody at Discworld call them punes? Tori,
It's
do you
just
know?
the running gag. It is the running gag. That's all it is. It's just it has come up in more than one book.
And, hey, it's fantasy, right? So like, gotta have fantastical elements, like people thinking pune is an okay word.
I want to interject here. There is a TV special, 3 hours long, an adaptation of this, and it's excellent. I've watched it 2 years in a row. So listeners, go try it out.
It is
Ooh.
absolutely excellent. It was done by Sky One and BBC, and it's got a couple of big names in it, and it also the Hogfather's boars that pull his sleigh are just adorable. I love them. They're so fluffy, and they've got the little tusks going on. No, I just think they're the cutest thing.
And they made a Wii.
They were fluffy.
Yes.
And Nigel Planner, who is the Discworld audiobook narrator, it actually plays Sidney, the wizard.
Yes, he does. And Pratchett himself has a little guest appearance. He's the shopkeeper at the end of the book.
Oh, I missed that.
I miss 100% of author self-inserts unless it's like really blatant, like Heinlein did.
Or Stephen King.
You should read Rejoice, a Knife to the Heart.
I should, yes. Yes. I have so much more Eric's than I need to read, but like I need to make it through this Guy Gabriel Kay novel first. All right. This is not my question, listeners. I'll have you know. Why do you think we read creepy stories at Christmas time? Or am I wrong that this is a creepy story?
You are not wrong, Little Red Book, because I'm sure that was your question.
That was Red's question.
No, for sure. Creepy stories at winter are a thing. It's the darkest time of the year. It gets colder. It gets historically it was more dangerous for our ancestors at this time of year, and so staying at home and telling stories around the fire was kind of a thing. And the darkness played a huge role in those stories.
Yeah, like almost every, if not every culture in the world has a winter solstice celebration. And obviously, humanity used to be in a much darker place, both metaphorically and literally. And we get some of that with the origin of the Hogfather being like rather gruesome, right? So I think it's just kind of like a natural extension of that.
Yeah, this is a really nice Christmas story, and it's got like lots of feel-good stuff, but I would not recommend it for kids.
I would recommend it for kids, absolutely.
I would too.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
kids, like as
Yeah.
Pratchett says, like kids are hardcore sometimes. Like they know that
That's a
things
good
get
point.
bad.
I love
Yeah.
that line he made. He's like, "Oh yeah, kids don't mind blood. They actually love it."
You have
No, it's
Mrs. Hugs
true.
like it is 100%.
It's more
Exact-
uncomfortable for the adults who have to read it to them.
Like I don't know if you guys have read Coraline by Neil Gaiman, but so that came out in the early 2000s, I want to say. I first read it when I was in library school, and I found it legit creepy. I was like, "This is the kids' book?
yeah.
Are you kidding me? This is like it's legit
Mhm.
creepy." But then when I later became a school librarian, the kids loved that book, and it
Mhm.
like they wanted to have discussions about the creepiness. And when I was younger, I liked reading scary stories. Like Goosebumps were a thing when I was a kid in the 90s, and they're still around. And now I don't want anything to do with horror books. Like I'm a coward, and like I get nightmares, and just like no, I'm gonna not do that.
Well, Nickelodeon had a whole special called Are You or running
Are you
series
afraid of
called
the
Are
dark?
You Afraid? Yep.
Yes, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I was watching that every
Oh
Friday
yeah,
night.
me
I'm
too.
very
Yep.
big into that.
Ash has no
But
idea what we're talking about.
we're
I
talking
have
about
some
what?
idea. I
I'm
I know
following the
about
conversation.
Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? I think that had a really good horror and makeup, makeup prosthetics person, right?
Sure.
I think it's a famous one.
I don't know
But
that.
That I don't know.
um,
but
either
it's
that or
like
some
that.
other '90s show I'm thinking
It's
of.
like that Chesterton quote, and I think that Gaiman quotes him in the beginning of, I think it's the Graveyard Book, about how we need to have stories about dragons, not because dragons are real, but because we need to know that we can beat them.
Yeah, we already know that
Exactly.
dragons are real. Yeah.
No, there was a very important book that like psychoanalyzed fairy tales. It was called The Uses of Enchantment by Bruno Bettelheim. Don't ask me to spell that, but it was and later it was found to be widely plagiarized, but it's still worth a read. It's he goes through and he talks about what it is that kids are taking from these stories. And if you look at the old versions of fairy tales, they really do all have the blood and the guts in them.
Mhm.
Like, Cinderella's stepsisters cut their toes off to try and make the slipper fit. And then afterwards, like they were punished for their comeuppance by like some birds came and pecked their eyes out at the wedding feast. Like it's gruesome and it's grim and they're very dark and it's all blood. And but kids are taking something from that. Like one example that I particularly remember is the story of the genie in the bottle. Like a boy lets the genie out of the bottle, and the genie's like, "Oh, well, I'm going to kill you because
Yep.
when I was first
Yep.
trapped in this bottle, I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sad. I'm going to shower gifts on the person who lets me out." And then the longer I was trapped, the angrier I became, and now I've just decided I'm going to kill the person that lets me out. And somehow in the story, the kid tricks the genie back into the bottle. So it has a happy ending. But if you look at that from a child's perspective, like it makes perfect sense. When you leave your child at home, they're angry that you've left them at home. And at first they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'd give anything for mom and dad to come back." And then after you've been gone for a couple of hours, then they're like, they want nothing to do with you. Like they have made best friends with the babysitter and you are you are mud to them. Like so these fairy tales are mirroring the very basic processes of a child's brain. And yeah, all of the violence is in there. It's already in there.
Glad we brought you on. I
Yeah.
take back. I was wrong about not recommend for children.
Yeah, you were.
Y'all
Feel bad.
convinced me. I feel terrible.
You should.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman himself said the darkest thing he's ever written was the start of the Graveyard Book.
It's pretty dark. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and the Little Mermaid kills herself, and
I have
Little
thoughts
Red
on the
Riding
Little
Hood does get
Mermaid,
eaten.
but we should probably move on from this question.
Well, how
yeah,
about
sure.
talking about Hans Christian Andersen, the Little Match Girl,
Oh my
which was
gosh.
Yeah,
There's a whole
referenced
section
here.
about that
The
in
red
Hogfather.
shoes. The red shoes.
Right, that too.
That's my favorite section of this book, actually.
The red
Second
shoes.
favorite.
I don't think
No,
that was
the
referenced.
little match girl.
Oh my gosh, that was upsetting.
It's like, well, the
Anyway.
angels show up. Oh, beforehand, and they save her? No, they show up afterward.
That is not good.
Well, the
But-
riff on
Spirit of
the
Hogswatch.
It's all ho ho and plum pudding and no. You see,
And other things ending in Ollie.
and all the other things in the You have to have a little match girl, so everyone could say, "Well, at least I'm not the little match girl." That's not fair.
Oh.
Yeah, the little match girl might still be the saddest story I know. It's just so bleak.
It
Yeah,
is
it's
so
terrible.
bleak. It's so bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like 100% believable.
Yes.
Woo!
I always say that Hans Christian Andersen tells anti-fairy tales as opposed to fairy tales. I don't know if you've ever read The Christmas Tree by him, by the way, or maybe it's called The Fir Tree, but that one is the tree wants to become a Christmas tree. He does, and then he's left in a corner and after
Yeah,
Christmas and just rots.
Well, if it's fairy tale versus fairy tale, what makes an anti fairy tale? Is it just something that's like really dark?
I would
no
say
fairies.
No fairies. Okay.
We're very
Feels
anti-fairies. No, I would say it's a great many of his stories are about people who get what they think they wanted, and it was actually the worst thing that ever happened to them.
Sounds like a fairy tale to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, Rapunzel doesn't. She gets what she wants.
I think a lot
Are
of
there fairies in Rapunzel?
We are so off topic.
Like that's the thing fairies do is like they trick you into doing stuff that you think you
Yes,
want, but then they
exactly.
make
Yeah,
it
no,
terrible.
No, that's
I think,
true.
I
That's
think
true.
modern fairy tales are the anti-fairy tales, where the modern fairy tales where it's like a complete rom-com and it's happy ever after for everybody, not just the main couple, but like, even the bad guys in rom-coms get a happy ending. Like, whereas the old fairy tales, like with the Fae, and we're talking like
Tamlin.
the lords and ladies, those Fae, they were dark and they were terrible and they kidnapped children and like they ate babies and like it's awful. It's awful. So
They
the
get you
old
to
fairy
sell your
tales versus
soul.
the new fairy tales, yeah.
And a lot of old fairy tales were German, and as we know, the German are
Well,
fond of traumatizing
I'm
children.
sorry. I'm going to stand up for my people. Because
Oh,
the Celts
I'm
have some
also
really awesome
sort of
fairy
German.
tales.
Oh yeah.
I just said Tamlin. Jesus.
So well, really, the original fairy tales are, in our modern sensibilities, are the anti fairy tales.
Yeah, Disney
Oh,
has
geez.
done cultural whitewashing with fairy tales.
Well, I don't know. Lion King was pretty dark, of course. I mean,
Heracles.
I wouldn't call Hamlet a fairy tale though, so that doesn't count.
Yeah.
although he does give Hamlet a good, happy ending, and spoilers for The Lion King, guys. The Hamlet character survives.
Let's move on.
I think
Probably
I've already
about
said that
time,
like 3 times.
Another question from Red. I've read The Color of Magic, The Light Fantastic, The Tiffany Book, Raising Steam, Going Postal, and Mort. Should I have read other books before this? What would you recommend?
That's for all you guys, because I don't have to answer.
So my big recommend would probably be Reaper Man, which the events of Reaper Man are referenced in this book. Because there's a bit where the wizards are talking about, oh, you remember that time there was all that spare belief floating around, or spare life floating around, and a man couldn't call his trousers his own. Like there's a scene in Reaper Man where the trousers come to life and they run away down the street before somebody can get them off the washing line. And but like it's not necessary for Hogfather, but I Reaper Man is my number one favorite Discworld book. I cry every time, and I'm going to recommend that to everybody all the time, every day, because Reaper Man is so good.
Reaper Man's quite good. I would recommend Mort, which you've already read. Reaper Man. and Soul Music.
Yeah. Soul
Soul
Music is
Music's
also
Susan's first appearance.
yes, and she is a young teen in that book. So if you enjoy Death as a character and if you enjoy Susan, then Soul Music is another good one to start with.
It's about music.
Music
So
with Roxanne.
basically,
There's a tons of musical punes.
tunes. So basically, I should have read the Death books before I got to this book.
Maybe,
It would have been
maybe
better.
some of the Rincewind books too, because they have all the wizards. But the wizards are
Yeah,
like
no,
everything.
if you've done Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic, then I think you're about good there. Some of the later wizard books are where Ponder gets his job as the reader of invisible writings, and so since Ponder features in Hogfather, and you get to see the rise of Hex, but again, not necessary for Hogfather, but yeah, it just depends on whoever your favorite characters are.
And it should be death. The other wizards are more interesting than Rincewind.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Rincewind is
Rincewind
a wet
just
blanket.
wants to, yeah, he just wants to be boring and for boring things to happen, and
He doesn't get it.
he just wants a nice potato dinner, and that like
It's
he'll
kind of
be
like Susan,
fulfilled.
except for
Hmm?
more boring.
Or Susan.
Um,
I felt so bad for Susan. Like all she wants to do is be normal. She just can't be normal.
so, yeah, some people just can't be normal. I definitely cannot be normal.
Thanks to
You're
our
a weirdo.
families.
Yeah.
Well, and with Susan, it's there's definitely some character growth with her, like her I think her final book is Thief of Time, and you kind of get to see her embracing her heritage and being not normal and finally settling into who she is. Like there's wanting to be normal, and then there's completely denying who you are as a person, and like
Mm.
not accepting that this is the way I am, and it's the way I'm going to stay. And then like you can't be happy if you're not being yourself. And for Susan, that has to include not being normal because she's just not.
I mean, when you're Death's granddaughter.
Mm. Adopted
Been-
granddaughter.
Been there.
Well, but still. I mean, she. Oh, that's a spoiler. So I
Well,
won't say that.
we should move into spoiler territory, I think, about now. It's been about half an hour. So all you listeners out there, you have some recommendations for more Discworld books. I don't know why you haven't read this one, but do that and then come back to this episode. We will be talking spoilers from here on out. On the Discworld, the Auditors of Reality hire the Assassin's Guild to kill the Hogfather. Oh, this is the summary. Okay. Hire the Assassin's Guild to kill the Hogfather, the jolly fat red fat man who gives presents to good children on Hogswatch. Death, with a capital D, must step in and take over for him while his granddaughter unravels the mystery and we learn about the nature of belief. So that's a synopsis. Thank you for hearing for writing that. Saved me some time for sure. Susan is trying to escape weird things as the granddaughter of Death by becoming a governess, and yet she still beats the crap out of monsters with a poker.
I already
Thoughts?
kind of talked about this a little bit.
A little bit, but I think there's more to say, especially with the monster bit.
I agree.
Okay. I love the part where she's at the party and she's not at the party, but she's just trying to read her book, trying to be normal. And then the little girl comes in and says, whatever her name is, I don't remember.
Twyla.
Twyla.
Well, I probably wouldn't.
And Gawain.
And Gwaine. I love that his name is Gwaine. Like, it's a knight. Anyway, comes in with the poker, or says, "Oh, there's a boogie or whatever in the cellar, and I'm scared." And she just takes the poker, and she's just walking down there, and the guests come out, and they're like, "What's she doing?" "Oh, the kids think there's something in the cellar," and they're like, "Oh, look, she made such a great scene because she comes back up with she makes all this noise."
Very psychological.
And the
Yeah,
poker
very
is bent.
psychological.
Yes, exactly.
Bent at 90 degrees.
Mhm.
But going back to that quote that you quoted about, dragons and knowing we can defeat them. That's the entire thing that Susan is trying to get across to the kids is the power of the poker, and it only kills monsters. And the kids know, like they tell the monsters later, she's got a poker, like. And
And she's really swinging that poker too. If it's bent that much,
Well, it was a big bogeyman. You really have to beat the crap out of those guys.
yeah, no
or
kidding.
bogeyman. But like the monsters really only exist because their previous governess would always threaten the children with these monsters that would do terrible things to them. And she was always angry about that. And she's like, Twyla got a great line. She says, Susan always says, "Don't get scared, get angry." And so she's teaching him some really good stuff there. And it fits in with the themes completely.
It's the power of belief. On the Discworld, belief is a driving force. The gods exist because people believe in them, and you see that in the book Small Gods, where the belief of their followers is what gives the gods their power. So Small Gods is a book about the great god Om, who he's discovered that people have not been believing in him properly. They believe rather in the idea of him and not him himself. And so he decides he's going to make an appearance on the disc and do some old-fashioned smiting. But to his horror, there's not enough belief for him to manifest in his normal guise of a great white bull. And so he's trapped in the body of a small desert tortoise and manages to find his one believer, the one person who really believes in him. And they're trying to increase the belief in the great god Om so that he can come back and smite people properly. But
Om's an a-hole.
Did they actually
Yeah.
use the word smite? Just out of curiosity, because I've not read
smite,
that.
yes,
think so.
smite comes up. It does.
Smite is a good word.
Small Gods is really good.
Marvelous book, and but it talks a lot about how belief works, and so you see that again in Hogfather, in that the Hogfather only exists because people believe in him, and the way that Tea Time or Tiatame is trying to kill him is by eliminating the belief in the Hogfather. So there's all this spare belief floating around and latching on to the other small gods, and that's how you get these the Veruca gnome and the cheerful fairy making an appearance.
I love the cheerful fairy.
He makes me so happy.
Yeah. What's your favorite like new thing created by extra belief?
Mine would be the Eater of Socks. There's
Mm.
a marvelous illustration in the Art of Discworld that I was telling you guys about yesterday of and it just looks like this little elephant vacuum cleaner with the big sad eyes. It reminds me of the Heffalumps and Woozles from the Winnie the Pooh movie, and it's adorable. Just this little, imagine an elephant with a little vacuum nozzle hose, and that's the Eater of Socks. And
Ash,
so
how about
cute.
you?
I like the cheerful fairy most because she is also the worst at her job. Like every other one of these beings comes into life just like able to do what they do, you know? Like sure, some of the things suck, like the Verucanum. I don't imagine that's a fun job. But you know, he does go around and put Verucas on people's feet. The hangover god has hangovers.
Or Bilius.
Yeah.
The oh god of hangovers.
Oh God.
Oh god.
The oh god, yes.
Me,
I don't think
me.
he's a new one though. Is he a new one?
Yeah, he's new.
Yeah.
He didn't exist
okay.
before. Yeah.
And then the cheerful fairy comes along and she tries to cheer people up, but everybody is just too miserable. And then eventually all the wizards in the university do their best to cheer her up by playing games.
Yeah, they all have to cheer her up because she's so terribly uncheerful.
Yeah.
Well, we all know the cheerful fairy in real life. Like we know that
Oh,
person.
yeah.
There's that one member of the
Oh.
family that's gonna, has all the rainy day puzzles and activities, and they get so sad when you're the cynical, jaded person that you are.
Well, so there's this whole scene where I'm gonna stop myself. We'll get back there. My favorite one is the gnome that rings the bells when things come into
Yes.
And the Arch Chancellor is just like, get out of here. Just get out of here. I'm tired of you things. Just
When he
popping
shows
into
up at the
existence."
end and it's like, which one are you? Well, when you hear the bells, that's me.
Someone's got to
And he's
do
like, well, and you could tell, like, it said something about how he looked really scared because he knew he'd been caught out or something like that. And it was just like, this poor little gnome, he's the last one to show up, and the wizards are done. They're just done.
All right. The question I certainly have been waiting for. What do you think about Hex?
What do you think about Hex, Ash?
Well, okay, I'm a comp sci major, so Hex is an entity very close to my own heart. Oh man, everything about Hex is fantastic. The out of cheese errors, the fact that nobody understands how Hex works, the idea of ant farms being used to transmit data and beehives and specifically honeycombs being
storage.
used for long-term storage, like that would actually work if you could implement it. Like Hex is a perfectly workable computer.
Well, there's a mouse too somewhere in there.
Yeah, because
know.
out of cheese error.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
The
there's a
mouse on
water
a
wheel
wheel.
that starts turning when it does complex computations. Yeah, no, everything with Hex is excellent.
And I don't think the rainbow umbrella was in this book, but later there's a rainbow umbrella, and just little pieces of Hex show up, get added, and then they stop working if you try to take the bits away. Like you go away for the evening and you come back the next morning, and there's a new piece, and the Hex won't work if you take that piece away. Like the fluffy teddy bear. Is
Yeah, I was
now
just
a
going to say that
permanent
shows up.
permanent
FTB.
part of the FTB enabled. So that's permanent now, and
I like every time they threaten it with percussive maintenance.
Like people, I think, have this idea that software developers like really know what they're doing and software works well and is understandable, and that's not the case. Like, my friends work at a very complicated company that is very profitable. Somewhere in the code one time, they found what was a useless conditional. So it checked to see if something was true, and that thing was always true. So they're like, okay, a tiny optimization, let's just remove that because it's just taking up space. And when they removed it, guess what? The program ran slower.
Oh no. I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
it broke it. I'm glad it didn't
No.
break it.
It didn't break it. It's just, for some reason, for whatever reason, it was not as efficient without the
Did they-
useless conditional.
it's
they-
because then the program doubted itself the whole time it was running. It was like,
There was no
as
check,
Hex
yeah.
says, this is just thinking out loud, mind you, but like
If true.
I just love that one of the main things that Death does to help save Hogfather is convince Hex that Hogfather is real.
Mm,
And then that's how
Yes.
that's where the bear comes in, because he's like, well, if he's real, I want a teddy bear. Santa has to bring
Yes.
me a teddy bear. And Death is like, oh, all right, here's a teddy bear.
Perhaps my favorite thing about Hex, and something I really wish they implemented in modern computers, is that it works better when you threaten it. Like like at one point it's throwing an end of cucumber error, I think.
Yeah.
And the Arch
Recall, yeah.
Chancellor, he's just not having that.
yeah, and it was getting that error because it caught craziness from the bursar.
Yes.
Like they had it talking with the bursar, and I
Oh,
don't know
poor
if you've ever.
Bursar.
I don't know if you guys have like an Echo device and you ever talk with the AI that is Al. You know what I'm talking about. You can't speak her name unless you summon her. But if you've ever had a
Oh, yeah.
conversation with the AI, like it's a lot like that.
What's wrong with a Bursar?
The Arch Chancellor is what's wrong with the Bursar. If you go back to previous books about the wizards, the Bursar used to be totally sane. He's just an accountant. He's a numbers guy. He just crunches numbers all day. All he wants to do is figure out where the pencils and post-it notes are coming from. And then Arch Arch-Chancellor Ridcully joins the faculty and is loud and boisterous and just all the time is shouting, and the bursar is like his number one guy. So the bursar is the one that's getting shouted at the most, and just as the books go on, he gets nerves and anxiety, and it gets worse and worse until finally he's as you see him in Hogfather.
Good explanation.
Poor dude.
I do love Red Clay. Can we talk about Bloody Stupid Johnson?
Oh yes, we can. Absolutely, we can. I love him. I love him.
Bloody Stupid Johnson.
So I got a little confused. He was the Arch-Chancellor at one point, correct?
No.
Okay.
He was just
I just
an
know he
inventor.
nailed up the bathroom.
He's a famous designer and architect, and think of him kind of like Frank Lloyd Wright, except instead of building amazing, fabulous things, he builds things that are terrible and never work right. And
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't close
So
up the
Frank
bathroom.
Lloyd Wright at the beginning of Back to the Future.
What?
Is that not the guy? Who's the guy from Back to the Future? Am I?
I
Doc
don't know.
Brown?
Is it Christopher something? Christopher
Do
Lloyd.
not cut
That's it.
Brown?
There we go.
Do not
It's Doc
do not
Brown.
cut this.
Yeah, no, Doc Brown, but the guy who plays them is Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher
okay.
Lloyd is an actor. Frank Lloyd Wright is a famous architect from
There you go.
Oklahoma. You should maybe look him up.
I make a point not to investigate American history.
That's probably smart.
Nuts.
There's
not
enough
much.
people thinking about it, you know.
Yeah, and the person who boarded up the bathroom was a previous Arch-Chancellor who
Okay,
used,
so that's
who
where I got
boarded up
who used the
bathroom.
bathroom.
Yes.
Okay.
And for the most part, like it seemed like the bath works pretty well. It's just
Just
got a
don't
few
hold the
things.
wrong levers.
That was the other part that confused me. And I read this section like 3 times. And I don't think I'm a dumb person. I don't. So
Most people don't.
most people don't think I'm dumb. Or
No, most people don't think they are dumb.
Thank you, Huron.
50% of people are stupider than average.
That's
The
true.
average is the median.
This is true. So now I completely lost what I was gonna say. I hate
You're
you
confused
guys.
about the levers in the
the
bath.
levers in the bathroom, and the orangutan was playing, and then the Arch Chancellor freaks out and has the door nailed shut. He just
I think it's meant
turned
to be in our imagination.
I
Okay,
think that what that was happening is just like there was afterburners, right? So I imagine some kind of fuel is being burnt by the organ, and
No,
it got really hot.
it's a pipe organ, and so there's water in the pipes, and so as the librarian is playing the organ, it's causing water to shoot out of random pipes in random places, and use your imagination.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
Old Faithful, I imagine just like
I think
Like-
that was an enema.
yeah, like a
what I
super
thought.
enema with like Old Faithful geyser. Just imagine that. So yeah, enough about enemas.
why nail
Yeah.
up the bathroom? Just say don't use the organ while I'm in the bath.
Well,
Wizards.
There's a lot of levers there. Like
Yeah.
those could be the 2 least bad ones that they used.
That's true.
My engineer husband was trying to explain to me the other day the concept of lockout tagout, I think it was called. So just you got to make it impossible for people to do the thing.
Hmm. Yeah, users are always stupider than you think.
Why they still have smoking signals inside of airplanes or smoking detectors?
And like poison symbols on bleach. Okay, I think that concludes the question on Hex.
With a random tangent into pipe organ.
Thoughts on belief versus reality. How the humans interact with belief and reality. All the small gods? That was
the question.
confusingly worded bit.
It was confusing. So since that's my question, let me say, what do you guys think about the interaction of myth, belief, and reality, and how and why we humans do it?
Should someone read the quote?
That's my quote.
Which
I
one?
think.
There's so many
Okay.
quotes.
The good one at the end.
Oh,
I was thinking the good one at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Someone needs to read the good one at the end and use the voice.
Ash needs to read his favorite quote. I have a different favorite quote, but it's from the same
Okay, yeah,
conversation.
no,
Why does
okay,
Ash
yeah,
get it?
I'll
That's
read
my
it.
favorite
Sorry.
too.
Okay, well, fine. You boys fight
that
it
one.
out.
Yes, no, you can read that one if you want. I'm just
No,
going
I
to read
don't
the
wanna
one at
read
the
that
beginning first.
Okay.
So this at the beginning, I think, is Terry Pratchett's idea on the matter. Everything starts somewhere, although many physicists disagree. But people have always been dimly aware of the problem with the start of things. They wonder aloud how the snowplow driver gets to work, or how the makers of dictionaries look up the spelling of the words. Yet there is a constant desire to find some point in the twisting, nodding, raveling nets of space-time on which a metaphorical finger can be put to indicate that here is the point where it all began. And for people who find this quote interesting, may I introduce you to the field of epistemological justification for belief? I'll provide a very, very basic overview of one of the problems we run into. So there's a trilemma, basically, when it comes to justifying knowledge. So either you have to be a foundationalist, which means you have to, at some point, assert things without justification, which is called taking an axiom. Or you can be an infinite regressionist and say that every cause has another cause, and it just regresses to infinity. And then the third one is you're like a coherentist, where you have a bunch of mutually supporting beliefs, and none of them are fundamentally justified. This is a problem that has dogged philosophers for thousands of years and is nowhere close to being solved.
Oh
You
my
didn't know
gosh.
you were getting a philosophy lesson, did you, people?
Philosophy doesn't
Glad.
exist.
That was fabulous. Watching Hurin's face while that was going down.
Yeah, listeners, every time I bring up history or philosophy, Hurin is he's just done. He's done with me.
It's a good running
Listen
gag.
to our listen to our Mazdalan episodes too.
Yeah.
Well,
Fully
I have the
appreciate
good quote at the end here if you would like me to read it.
How about you
Absolutely.
read Susan and I read Death?
Yes, yeah, I'm sure your death is better than mine would be. Okay, well, the quote starts with Susan. All right, said Susan. I'm not stupid. You're saying humans need fantasies to make life bearable.
Really? As if some kind of pink pill? No, humans need fantasy to be human. To be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape.
Tooth fairies, hogfathers, little.
Yes, as practice. You have to start out learning to believe the little lies.
So we can believe the big ones.
Yes, justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing.
They're not the same at all.
You think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet, Death waved a hand, and yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged.
Yes, but people have got to believe that, or what's the point?
My point exactly.
Well done. Well done.
I love that. I read it a lot.
Your death voice was just fabulous. I love it. You did a great
It's
job.
hard to get the all caps.
It's a really good quote.
So I have
Also-
a different quote.
Sorry,
that
one
doesn't-
Okay,
note.
what's your quote?
It indicates that Terry Pratchett is a moral anti-realist. Look it up.
Now I think you're doing it.
This is great.
You're totally doing this intentionally, Ash.
Like, it's a bonus that it upsets Hurin so much, but this is legitimately what I want to what I like talking about. Yeah, no, if I could get away with it, I would make this just a lecture on moral
I'm
philosophy.
sure you would.
Dude, I would do a
I'm sure you
podcast with you about it. I'm not exaggerating.
Oh dear Lord.
We'll do a tangents
But-
episode.
No, please, God, no.
And so I have a different quote, and this is actually not, well, it is philosophical, but not in the same way. So Susan, this is towards the end of the conversation. Stars explode, worlds collide. There's hardly anywhere in the universe where humans can live without being frozen or fried. And you believe that a bed is a normal thing. This is a most amazing talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Death has the best lines.
Death is smart.
Death is smart. It's very confused about the human condition.
I mean,
You
are we all?
invented boredom.
And dullness, too.
I forgot this until now, but there's a quote in Hogfather that directly communicates my problem. Getting an education was a bit like a communicable sexual disease. It made you unsuitable for a lot of jobs, and then you had the urge to pass it on. Which, yeah.
He's really good at finding the truth in things and then saying the uncomfortable things in a very comfortable way.
And making you giggle the entire... I laughed so hard. Many times I actually laughed out loud, which is rare when I read a book. Even when I think it's funny. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I'm not talking about, like, snorts through my nose laugh. Like, laugh.
Yeah.
Or perhaps
Like
ho ho
milk
ho.
through your nose.
Yes. Actually, I was drinking some Diet Dr. Pepper and it came out my nose. It was pretty uncomfortable. I don't recommend taking sips of soda while reading Terry Pratchett.
Can we all share our favorite or the funniest section that was for us?
I don't know.
I already said Hex, so
Okay. I loved Nobby Nobs talking with Death and him just reverting to a childlike state, and all he can say is
that was good.
Yes. Related to that, just the whole Death in the shopping mall is when he's talking with the first child is like, and will you be good? Then we have a contract. Like,
Man, I wish mall Santas were like that.
and you can't give her a sword. It's a sword.
it's not supposed to be safe.
What
She
if
could
she
cut
cuts
herself.
herself?
Well, that would be educational.
The part where Twyla comes in and she's like, she sees Death sitting there, and she says, everybody's scared to come around here because our governess has a poker. And Death is like, a poker?
Oh, dearie me.
Yes, right. Yes, that's what.
And then she's like, I'm gonna go get Gawain, and then we're gonna come watch.
Yes, exactly. We're down for this. We're on board for this mauling of Death with the poker.
Okay, so my answer was boring. So I'll come up with a better answer. When the restaurant had to make do with boots and mud, that was good.
Yes. Yes.
Beggars show up later and they get the boots and mud back.
And now they know that their cuisine, their diet is high class. Good stuff.
It's very posh.
It's very posh.
So I'm going to say, I wouldn't say this is my favorite, but the meet cute between Violet and, oh God. And it was just so funny. I was like, it was a parody of a rom-com when they meet up. And also
I would say
out
straight up, that would be a good rom-com.
And you also find out in this scene that Violet once took all the teeth from a kid's head because their head was under the pillow.
You didn't tell her not to.
And they give you the pliers.
They have the pliers, yeah.
She wasn't really trained. She only had like a couple days training.
She needs
So
to bring back
realistic.
the teeth are under the pillow.
That's what it's like when you're at a new job and you don't have enough training. You're like,
Oh.
do
You've
I
never
do
worked at
this?
a call center.
Poor Violet. Speaking of Death being educational, the scene, this is not it is kind of funny, I guess. And no, it's not. It's not funny. Where Susan throws the poker through Death into Tiamin, or tea time.
Tea time.
Tea time. And Death, because Tea Time dies, obviously. And Death says, what did he say? He says his name right, is what he does. He goes, well, you said it. I didn't have to because there's a running gag where he's correcting the pronunciation of his name the entire book. And Death's like, well, of course I said your name right. And then I really like the part where Death says, Susan's like, you made them watch that? And he's like, it's educational. They know there's monsters. Now they know they have a poker. And we come full circle.
That same scene, he winks at Susan to give her the idea that he has something to plan. And she said, I thought you had a plan. You winked at me. He's like, I was planning on seeing what you were going to do.
I love your Death voice.
It's a fabulous Death voice.
No, thank you.
I find it funny that depictions of death, at least for me, like my favorite depiction is like such a hotly contested spot. Like there are at least 3 that are currently competing for the number 1 position, and I have no idea which one wins out.
Are you going to elaborate or just leave it us?
Oh, I could leave it on a teaser for a Tangents episode.
Do you just really, really want to do a Tangents episode? Is that what this is?
No, I don't. No. Well, Death from Discworld, obviously. Death from Sandman. And Death or Hood from Malazan.
Yeah.
Well, that one I don't know, but I know
there's an asterisk next to Hood.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, we could talk about that later.
Spoilers episode after this. Ian asks, are there any references to The Godfather? And to that, I'm going to make a bold claim and say no.
No.
By some people's definition, they're both Christmas stories. So
I have never heard that about The Godfather ever.
Well, you see, The Godfather takes place over several years, which means that Christmas happened in the world at some point.
That's a very generous interpretation of Christmas movie, but okay.
You can also watch it at Christmas time, which makes it a Christmas movie.
Ian, if you're listening, yeah, that's how I feel about your new episode.
That was mean.
Oh, Ian's fine.
He
put Citizen. Well, he didn't, but is Citizen Kane as a Christmas movie, or even Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is a Thanksgiving movie that they even said it was. Come on.
It actually, literally takes place on Thanksgiving.
But American Thanksgiving is pretty close to Christmas, so like it's a rounding error.
It's literally on Thanksgiving, like literally on Thanksgiving.
Okay, it's an off by 1 error.
Lammy Lambs says, "What is your favorite educational toy other than the sword?" I already said mine. It's the poker.
Well, listeners, may I introduce you to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy? It's a great resource.
Wikipedia?
No, it's from the book. You shouldn't be looking at the Stanford anything.
You should. You should.
Not for this question.
It tells you a lot of philosophy.
Gosh.
What is my favorite educational toy? Okay.
Hex.
Toy. Hex?
That's
Hex is
a good
a toy.
answer.
It can be. He's a computer.
Hex
You can play games with him.
Hex is like a research project.
I don't know. I think you can make him into a toy.
Tori,
Good.
what's your answer to Mike's question? Since they're going to be weird.
If he was literally talking about favorite educational toys, I'm going to go with books. But if he was talking about the toys that are in the Hogfather, I liked the Captain Carrot action figure with outfits that was in somebody's stocking.
Are books toys?
No.
Absolutely, they are. For sure.
I disagree with you there.
I wrote an entire article about it for Tulsa Kids magazine, and I will send you the link to it. I will find it.
I will read it, I promise. I'll keep my
That means
my
he's
mind
not
open.
going to read it.
No, I'm going to read it. I read. That's the thing that I do.
I really like those dexterity puzzles.
Yeah, that's a toy.
Yeah, it does teach you something. Dexterity and patience.
Okay. So
Hex, final answer.
Okay. So that's all our questions. So do you have any closing thoughts before we end the episode?
Death is the best character in Discworld. This might be my favorite Discworld novel, but I'm like a huge Christmas buff, so that's my thing. It's hilarious. That's it.
I'm really glad I read this book, and I feel like I missed so much because there's so much going on in this book, and I'm definitely going to read it again.
Hogfather is a fabulous book, and it's a fabulous entry in the Discworld series. If you haven't read any other Discworld books, then why are you listening to the spoiler section of this podcast? But it's a great place to start with the Discworld, and I feel like it has a lot of good themes that are good, not just for Discworld, but for any good novel.
In the interest of leaving listeners with a final educational tidbit, the first line of the novel, everything starts somewhere, although many physicists disagree. That, I believe, refers to the idea that the universe may in fact be a self-causing phenomenon.
I can't believe you guys are still recording together.
We
It's so
don't know much about creation of universes.
Don't have a lot of examples to go by.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like we can just run experiments. Yeah.
Oh, there's one thing I forgot. I really like the line. Oh, sorry, Huron, you're gonna have to edit all that background noise off. So I really like the line where Susan asks Death, if the sun would have not come up, and he said, "No, the sun wouldn't come up. It was a gaseous ball of fire that would come up
It wouldn't
instead
have
of
been
the
the
sun."
sun.
And that should have been back in the belief reality part.
Yes, I should have.
I'm sorry, I failed. You can fire me now if you want.
It's Christmas.
It's Christmas. Thank you. Christmas mercy.
Yeah. I really liked the footnote where the guy was talking about cargo cults and how those people have such silly beliefs. And then the footnote goes on to say, like, they don't know useful things like the square root of 25.7, but they know which of the 70 almost identical looking sea snakes will kill you. Goes on and on and on. And I think that's really important to remember. Small scale civilizations were full of really smart people who were really good at what they did. And that is how we came to be here.
Yep.
So I think that'll be it for us. Thank you, listeners, for joining us and for sitting through the episode.
I was just going to say, if you've made it this far.
You can find us on the Legendarium's Discord. The invite link is on legendarium.com. We are also on Twitter @GreenTeamPod. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon. Thanks, Craig, for loaning us a little corner of your media empire, and Horizon Brave for starting this all. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, Little Red Book, for scoring us another great guest. And you don't really have to say this, Ash. It's a joke. And Hurinfan. See you next time.